and they're sitting in front of all sorts of beautiful gear. But I think to myself, do you know what you're talking about? I want to hear you do something. And then when I listen to the one thing I can find from them, it just sounds fucking awful. Who the fuck are you? And why are you talking to me about audio? Hello everyone, here I am in a dressing room in Narbonne in France, I think. I will have to check that one. That's the pleasure of being on tour. You don't really know where you are day to day, but I'm pretty sure it is Narbonne in France. And I just wanted to make this quick video just to answer the question, who the fuck am I? And why am I talking about audio on YouTube? And I think it's a valid question because, as I've previously stated in videos, I do watch a lot of audio content on YouTube, and I love a lot of the audio content I watch on YouTube. But there are people, one in particular who I'm not going to name, who really push their courses. Work with me on this and buy my course and you're going to get so much better at mixing. And I always find it a bit weird when these people that don't seem to share their CV in any way. They might be sitting in front of a fancy desk on some nice outboard, but they don't really share their CV in any way. And they're trying to flog you a course. I kind of go and try and listen to some of the work they do. And in this particular case, I only found one mix online that the guy had been involved in. And I've got to say I was underwhelmed. And I kind of listened to this mix and I thought, why are you selling courses, mate? This is beyond ridiculous. But I think it's a fair question to ask, particularly if you're watching me do mix videos. Like, who the fuck are you? And why are you talking to me about audio? So I want to make a couple of things clear that I have made clear in previous videos. If you want to know how I got into recording and got to work in the studio that I worked at during my 20s, there'll be a video that will be linked here somewhere or up here. I can never remember what side it is. I think the important thing that I want to say is I'm not purporting to be able to tell you how to mix or what to do or anything like that. But I did do it full time. It was a full-time job for about 13 years. I was recording bands, producing bands, engineering things, mixing things. I did a little bit of live stuff, not a huge amount, mostly in the studio. I did a lot of live recordings where I take studio gear out to places and record bands live. I think the biggest name I did in terms of that was Phil Collins playing with a band at the 100 Club in London. And we took a 24-track tape machine down there, and I will tell the story about that one day. But certainly late 90s, all through the noughties, I was there. I've been there, I've seen it, I've done it, I've made all the mistakes, I've made things sound good, I've made things sound really shit. And I think that's an important thing, to have a kind of reality check. Now, nowadays, you know, full disclosure, I don't make my money from audio engineering anymore. You know, I earn a little bit on the side here or there, but my main living these days is 6 months a year, touring, playing in a band, playing guitar, and that's what I do for a job. But I did, for a good 13 years, make pretty much all of my money engineering, you know, whether it be mixing things, recording bands. And I hear this thing a lot where there's this kind of journey. I hear it in people's YouTube videos where it's a journey to become full-time working in the industry. And I've got to be careful because I don't want to sound arrogant, but I never really had a problem back in the day doing that. I seemed to just start at a studio and within 6 months it was a full-time living. Now, I think that was more due to the time that we lived in, right? At the end of the 90s, people weren't sitting around with laptops doing recordings. People were at most using some sort of 8-track setup at home, maybe with an ADAT machine or, you know, a 4-track. Or the idea of someone having a 24-track recording studio at home was unheard of, except in really rare circumstances. So I think it was just a different time. At the end of the day, we had the space and we had the equipment, and because we had that and we were in an area where there were lots of bands that wanted to be Oasis, which was the thing at the end of the 90s, we just got work, you know, and it didn't really matter, to be honest, whether I was any good or not at first. And I think what happened was bands came in and strummed their chords and I put mics around it and made them sound half decent. And then over time, I got better at doing my job, and then better bands wanted to record with me. And in the end, I think for the setup we had and for the time, I did a fairly good job. Now, the interesting thing with all this kind of YouTube stuff and what I'm doing on my channel is I'm getting back into it. I sold the studio in 2013, but I'd been touring for a couple of years by then. And when I started touring, I kind of stopped recording bands and doing stuff like that. So I'd kind of had 10 years off. And in 2020, with the old virus going round, I kind of got back into it. And a friend of mine needed their album sorting out. They got halfway through an album and it wasn't really working for them. So they kind of turned all the files over to me and went, finish off all the production. And I had a really good time doing that. And I've got to say, at first I was in there going, why is this sounding bad? I've forgotten all sorts of things. But slowly, not that slowly, but, slowly things came back to me. And I'm really pleased on the most part with the sound of that album. And I got to work with Tom Lord-Alge as well, which was absolutely lovely. I've known him for a while, but it was just nice to actually work with him on a project. And just see how he worked and how professional he was. Like he'd mixed a track that's on this album. And then I was doing all the other stuff. And I got to the end of it. And I was like, his mix sounds great, but it doesn't fit with the rest of the album at the moment. It just needs some adjustments. So I rang him up and he was like, I'll just send you over the stems and then you can have a tweak about make it fit with the album. There was no pretentiousness, or there was no, don't you know who I am? You should make your mixes fit my mix because I'm Tom Lord-Alge. He didn't do any of that. It was just a really professional exchange. It was lovely doing all that. And that really got me back into enjoying doing production again. So then I started doing a few bits, and then over the years bought a bit more equipment, moved off just working in the door, started buying a couple of bits of outboard, and then over the last year I've really gone full out and got loads of analog stuff, and I'm enjoying getting back to my roots and working with real gear and faders under the fingers and all of that kind of stuff. But I have to confess, I'm doing it all for my own passion and my own enjoyment. This is not my job. I've got a shitload of experience that I can talk about, and in other areas I'm completely out of date because I was 10 years out of the game. And there are things I'm discovering, there's plugins and techniques that I'm discovering now that I'm like, oh wow, this is cool. And I'm sure there's some kids out there who are like, all right, Grandad, we've been doing that for the last 5 years. And it's like, and that's perfectly fair enough. And I'm not trying to sell you a course, and I'm not trying to claim to be the best ever, but it is an important question to when you're watching anyone. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're watching audio content on YouTube or physics or maths or computer programming or video production or whatever. I think it's really important to ask about the person you're watching who you might be trying to get tips and tricks from. Who the fuck are they and what the fuck do they know? I think that's perfectly fair. So this is just a quick video to kind of say, no, I don't do it full time. I'm not claiming to do it full time, and I'm not trying to do it full time, but I did do it full time and I learnt a load of stuff. And also I'm out of date on some stuff, and I'm just enjoying the journey here to partake in the joy that is YouTube and spread some of the information that I think that I am knowledgeable about, and also ask questions on things that I'm not so knowledgeable about. I'm not trying to flog you a course. I'm not trying to claim to be anything that I'm not. And I think the same kind of transparency is what you should expect from other people on their channels. There's a lot of people out there that have really impressed me and clearly do have the CVs and, sound absolutely amazing and really know what they're talking about. But there's a couple of people out there who also like to leave the odd negative comment, and I know they watch me, and we'll leave the odd negative comment and then delete it again afterwards, which is, a little bit strange. I still see it. I get it as a notification. But then I go to their videos and they're sitting in front of all sorts of beautiful gear, but I think to myself, do you know what you're talking about? I want to hear you do something. And then when I listen to the one thing I can find from them, it just sounds fucking awful. And I think to myself, why is anyone listening to you, mate? You got all the gear, but No idea. I'm going to be diplomatic because I'm not going to name any names, and I don't particularly want to pick on anyone. And there's other people out there who are completely honest. They're just sharing their journey. They say things that are right, they say things that are wrong, but they never claim to be the best at anything. And, you know, I appreciate those people more. So yeah, I hope that answers who the fuck am I and why you should be listening to me about audio on YouTube. And maybe you shouldn't. I think the only person really that you should listen to and go, when he speaks, he's God, is Dan Worrell. Anyone else, you know, it's just opinion. Don't know if this is a good video, but just felt the need to make it. So thanks for watching. I'll be home back in my setup soon and doing some more mixes with my lovely setup and giving away the multi-track, which is what I like to do. So see you later.